Now to a conversation with the leader of NENSA, the New England Nordic Ski Association. It's based in the Upper Valley and is the umbrella organization for Nordic skiing events across the region. Executive Director Heidi Lang says the group's goal is to inspire a lasting love of the sport for skiers of all ages and ability levels. And she tells us that mission is getting a boost thanks to the popularity and visibility of a really famous name in Nordic skiing.
And we are seeing incredible growth and success of the sport, not just here in New England, but in America. And, we can see that really clearly in Jessie Diggins' success, not only as the greatest American skier of all time, but really one of the greatest cross-country skiers of all time. So the sport of cross-country skiing is much younger than alpine skiing in America, I think it's fair to say. But we are seeing incredible growth and success at all levels.
The success of Jessie Diggins, you mentioned her. What did you see that inspire in maybe young Nordic skiers?
It's hard to capture it all in words, to be honest. Jessie is such a role model in every way. It's so clearly visible on the surface, the glitter, the sparkle, the joy, and that's readily accessible, right? Everybody can see that easily, and we see it in our youth. We see a lot of glitter at our races. We see kids in our area embracing that joy and the sportsmanship that she emulates, just embracing their peers and their communities. And it goes, deeper than that, of course. Jessie is an incredible mentor and role model in so many ways. She's so willing to be open and vulnerable and very transparent about her journey, not just celebrating the successes, but sharing what she's experiencing through challenges and struggles. I think that's had a very powerful influence on skiers as they're developing and navigating what are hopefully long journeys in the sport.
New England and Vermont specifically have had a great track record in sending athletes to the Olympics over the past several cycles. It's impressive.
Thank you. We've done a little analysis of that here on our end. We were curious what that trend looked like numerically. And we looked at the last two Olympic cycles and discovered that 50% of the U.S. Olympic team had an affiliation with the New England program through their journey. And that could include skiers that came to New England in college or as professional skiers. But then when we looked further and drilled down a little bit deeper, 30% of that audience grew up in our youth and junior programming here in New England. So we're incredibly proud of that. And it's early to say yet for this year, but trends are tracking in a similar fashion.
That impressive statistic that you just quoted, what does that say about what you and club organizations all around New England are doing each and every week?
You just named the key word, which is clubs. So we've been celebrating our 30th year at NENSA this year, which has had us deep in our archives and reflecting upon the history of the organization and also the values at its roots. And the organization was founded 30 years ago. John Caldwell led that charge, and he's pioneered the sport in America. He's considered one of the founding fathers, if not the founding father of cross-country skiing in America. And his vision for it here in New England was really rooted in the club tradition in Norway and the idea of community programming, serving skiers at all ages and stages. So at our start, we had a Bill Koch League. We had our youth league, and that predated NENSA by 2 decades. And so that was already very successfully established, and there were a number of youth clubs, but it was really growing up of the Bill Koch League, expanding that to all stages of sport and developing an ecosystem of club and community-based programming that would support skiers through all stages of development. We started with our original list. I think we had 8 clubs at the beginning of the organization's history in 1995, and we have over 60 clubs today in New England. And in the tight-knit geography that we have here in New England, that has resulted in just a lot of sharing of resources and a very cooperative, collegial community where everyone's really working together.
The COVID-19 pandemic is a chapter that many of us would like to forget, I think. But one of the nice things that emerged from it was that people really rediscovered a love for the outdoors. People were buying outdoor sports equipment. They were getting out there on hikes, on walks, on cross-country ski trips, for example. And I wonder if you have seen the interest that spiked during the pandemic continue somewhat.
Yes, we're watching that closely. We have. It's been exciting. I have some numbers for you. We had over 8,000 participants across all of our programs last year, and that's a cumulative sum. But we look at certain programs as a sign of health in the growth of the sport, and especially youth participation. The culmination of the season for skiers in our Bill Koch League is our Bill Koch League Youth Festival, which happens every year in March. And participation there has risen about 40% in like the last 3 years compared to the decade prior. So we've seen huge growth there that has been persistent over those years post-pandemic. And we're starting to see the health of participation at that level bubble up to the next stage, which is junior competitive skiing. And we saw last year historically high participation at our Eastern Cup series, and that's the highest level of regional racing that we govern at NENSA. And we saw our largest fields last year, and it was about a 16% jump over the year prior. We had over 3,000 skiers participating at that series.
Years ago, the only way to participate in Nordic skiing was to wait for the natural stuff to fall from the sky, and that still is the best way, of course. But we've seen destinations really invest in technology that helps them sort of fill in the blanks somewhat with machine-made snow. I wonder how much of a game changer you have seen that be in the sport.
It's a big game changer. We're seeing more gaps, as you described, in natural snowfall. And of course, it still comes, but we need to provide coverage in the interim, in between. We've seen a lot of growth and development of snowmaking technologies. About a decade ago, there were a lot of different approaches being pursued, and we're learning all the time how to achieve the most efficient and sustainable approaches to snowmaking for our sport. So we're seeing those technologies expand or advance all the time. And not only the technology itself and the approach, for example, like whether the snow is produced and then distributed, or is it distributed across a trail system as it's being blown. So we're seeing not only the advancement, and we're gaining learning of what are the most effective and efficient approaches, but we're also learning how to do this in a sustainable way. So often using renewable energy sources. We're seeing large solar arrays at many of our venues.
When our viewers watch some of the Olympic competition, what would you recommend they keep in mind in terms of admiring the athleticism, in terms of really understanding what's going on inside the athletes' minds or bodies as they compete on the world stage in Milan Cortina?
That's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is watching an elite athlete in any sport. There's an efficiency in technique and in skill that makes the effort a little bit less perceptible than when you're watching somebody a little bit less skilled. So sometimes the sheer amount of effort that's being expended is not necessarily quite as easy to see and appreciate. You can see it clearly in the finish corral. I think you can see how hard, you can see the time it takes for an athlete to recover after finishing a race, and appreciate that piece there. But also there's a whole element of tactics in this sport that's really fascinating. And so I'm just watching closely and seeing strategically how an athlete is navigating a race course, how they're working within a field, and how they're choosing strategically where to make a push or put on a tactical move. That can be highly unique and individual. So it keeps the sport really interesting. You'll see people identifying and playing to their own personal individual strengths. You'll see the field at times working together, and other times individual athletes, playing to their own strengths. So it can be very exciting to watch, and it'll look different in an individual race than it will in a head-to-head format, like a mass start or a sprint. It can be both easier and harder to see, I suppose, in each of those scenarios, if you know what you're looking for. So in an individual start, those are very exciting races because the skier's racing the clock. You can't see that head-to-head, minute-to-minute experience necessarily. You can kind of follow the splits, but you can still watch how the skiers are skiing, and you can watch different parts of the course and pay attention to how different skiers are choosing to navigate part of the race.
You mentioned the finish line. At the finish line, you can expect to see a couple photo finishes, I think.
You certainly can. Sometimes camera review is required to determine whose toe is crossing that lens first.
What life skills, what passion for the sport do you see sparked in each and every participant, regardless if they make that master's level of competition?
It's all about the journey, and just keeping the sport fun is really at the root of everything that we do. And so if there's a healthy foundation for that, and there's joy and support in the community, and if success is measured in relative individual terms and not based on overall metrics, then I think anybody can define and find the success they wish in the sport.